is why you should also tune in next week. And have your stats, have your numbers, and have your confidence to get that seller to want to list with you.
Okay. And you believe the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's your your phone call or your door knock or whatever, however you get the lead, is your foot in the door. But your sign in the yard is your listing presentation, showing them your confidence and how you're going to get it done, and also showing that they're making sure really that the personalities are gonna mesh.
All right. So let's, if I may, this isn't scripted, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think the key components to a great listing presentation are?
I think it's connecting with that person. I'm a little bit old school to a bit. I build my relationship with my customers and with my sellers. I show a genuine interest in everything that they have to say. I don't just walk in and say, here's all my stats, me. I come from, what are your needs? Tell me a little bit about you. And it ties into that motivation, and it lets you know that pre-qualifying that you do, really the seller that is wanting to move forward and sell, because we all hear about buyer's remorse. There's seller's remorse.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah,
so don't waste your time.
So you can have the best listing presentation. It can be 30 pages or 300 pages, full color, all of this. But if you're not doing that first stage of some people call it the Ford process, which is family first, or bond, which is build rapport first, what's inside that presentation doesn't mean squat, does it?
Yeah, I think it's about listening to what they're actually looking for, and that goes to that disc profile thing too, and identifying who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody who needs the details and needs the numbers, then you better have that. But if you need to know ahead of time if that's the person you're talking to, or you're going to talk to the person who needs you to admire the paint color and the trim that they did, and the granite countertops that they picked out from Bali or whatever it is. And if that's the person you're with, you need to be ready for that person too.
So that's important to know. We're actually going to have a mastermind, I think, about disc, or a class coming up about disc profiles, because depending upon the components in your actual printed listing presentation and or digital listing presentation, we'll talk about those two formats in a second. You may need everything in that presentation or none of it, depending upon the type of person across the table, right? Would you guys agree?
Yeah, I agree
right?
wholeheartedly.
I mean, if you're dealing with the guy that you walk in the door and you know right away that he just wants to know what price you want to list this house for and what your commission is.
It's really refreshing when that happens, but you do have to have you have to have everything. So when they do come out of left field and ask you a question, oh, well, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's that stat.
Yeah, and on the other end, you get that high I, high S who wants to talk about their family, talk about you. Now, you're prepared. You might be a high D coming into the listing presentation with it wide open, and you're ready to talk. And then you realize they don't want to talk about that yet.
Right.
So you close it. You put it off to the side or put your computer away, and you just start asking those questions and building rapport, right? So that's really, really important in a listing presentation, because you have it prepared for everybody, but you may need all of it or none of it.
Right.
You've probably seen that happen before.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I see it all the time in any type of listing I go to, and as soon as I walk in and I introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm so from Keller Williams, whatever. If the first thing out of their mouth comes out, such as, well, what's my house worth? I'm like, I know this guy's not really, he just wants to know the statistics, and that's it. He doesn't really want to know about me or what, but I try to get that little bit of a...
I have the same problem. What do you mean you don't want to know about me?
Yeah.
I got some great stuff to tell you.
Well, there's some really great things too. You direct them on how you want the presentation to really go, and of course, they have those main, objections. I really just want to know how much my house is worth. I tell you what, I have that information for you, but right now, what I need to do is walk through the house briefly and just kind of look through it as the eyes of a buyer, and then we'll sit down and go over everything that I have for you. It'll take about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll do that. Does that sound good to you? And what I found is they're okay with that, because I have been, in all my years, I've had the 2-hour, 3-hour listing presentation, which is really, it does not have to take that long. And all the mega agents that are out there, they'll tell you, I think 15 minutes is one of the shortest amount of times. But around 45 minutes, you can have everything signed and then get your house on the market, Mr. Seller, and move forward. But there's certain answers that you can provide to the seller to, like I mentioned, redirect that conversation to get going where you need to be.
Well, and that goes to it goes again to knowing the personality that you're talking to, and also knowing, showing them that you're confidently in control. And sometimes if you're dealing with some people, you kind of have to be in control without maybe telling them you're in control, and knowing how to do that, because sometimes you run into the person who's like, this is what's happening. You're okay, well, here's what's actually going to happen, maybe in other terms. And because, with listing presentations, with buying presentations, with showings, if you let them kind of run it, then you lose everything.
Absolutely. And we do have the pre-qualifying, just like with a buyer, that we try to do. I don't do it as much as maybe some other agents, because my whole thing is, if I can ask for the appointment, get the appointment, I'm able to have the appointment go how I want it to go. But trust me, I mean, I spend a lot of time making some wrong moves. But for like the newer agent, or if they're transitioning from a buyer's agent to taking on more listings, that pre-qualifying, those questions that we have available are great, because you already have that in hand. And then the first 5 minutes, like right after you viewed the property, then you can be like, okay, has anything changed ever since we talked a couple of days ago about these things that we've already went over? No? Perfect. So now we can get into the price point of the house and get you to, XYZ where you need to be, whatever.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the formats. Looks like, Gianna, you have in front of you a digital listing presentation.
I do.
Do you use that, and Amanda, you guys use a digital or hard copy?
I do a hard copy.
Okay, hard copy. So there's two great examples right there. I mean, I did this for 25 years. All I had was a hard copy. But I think if I were to get back into production, I'd use a digital version. We're talking about so what I want to ask you is now the components. Whether you use that format or that format, what are the actual meat and potatoes and important components of a good listing presentation? An introduction letter, do you have that in there?
Well, it depends. So the business that I have is primarily from expireds.
Yeah.
So I already have like a negative against me, and I have to let that person know, I'm here because you've already went through maybe a bad experience. I'm here to show you how it's going to be done right. Okay. So I typically try to get somebody on the phone. Yeah. And it doesn't happen as easily as it used to, just because of the telemarketing things that we're all kind of up against now. But
so your listing presentation is tailor-made for the person you're walking into. It's not the same listing presentation every time.
Well, no, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So once I actually have captured that person, whether I'm sitting in front of them for my listing presentation, or if they're from New York or wherever. It's my cloud CMA, which we all have access to. I think it's really beneficial because we can.
It's a good tool.
Yeah. It's a great tool. Yeah. And then what I have here actually is something that's available to us through Keller Williams. It's a guide to selling your home. Yep. So we have to actually go in there and put our stats and put our numbers, and we update that yearly. But our own KWRI has this great visual. Yeah. That it looks like I've spent hours on it. Yeah. It takes me like 5 minutes.
So let me be clear on that. So just for those agents, you guys, or those agents listening, inside your world of Keller Williams, you have a templated listing presentation, a templated pre-listing presentation, and a templated buyer consultation that you can edit and personalize to your own needs. Put your own reviews in there. Put your own statistics in there.
Testimonials.
Put your own testimonial. Put your own marketing plan in there, right? I think one of these documents says, here's your here's your 14-step marketing plan. Well, I turned mine into a lucky 13.
Yeah, or if you have 14 steps in yours too, but because at one time before we had the advantage of having eager new agents to the company that wanted to sit open houses, we didn't want to do them. Yeah. So we didn't offer it in the marketing plan. Yeah. So we took out open houses and put something else in that we do that wasn't there. So.
Right. And at first, especially a new agent going on their first listing appointment, they probably don't have the tools or the capital to do all 14 steps of that marketing plan. So that's something you really got to look at.
But they can still offer 14 steps, or we have a 15-step. They can offer that, and then they can have another agent be able to hold the open house or whatever. You can get together with somebody else to help you with the listing.
Did you see that listing presentation that I put on Facebook last week? It was a little post-it note says, here's my 10-step marketing plan. One, hire me. 9, I'll do all the rest.
Yeah.
I actually have that on a t-shirt.
And we use a little bit of the digital, if I bring my iPad with me for some of the video work and drone and Matterport work that we do. But the reason why I like this is because I leave them with this.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't seal the deal that day.
Yeah.
And it's a joke. I'm like, this is some really great reading when you have nothing better to do. Just go
Yeah.
ahead. And they always
And-
laugh at that.
And that, I mean, we're fortunate that red is Keller Williams' key color, but you can get those presentation covers in red, black, or white. We specifically get red because it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
I'm always with the red.
Yep.
No matter what I do, I put red.
So we don't have the time to go into where to find those on KW or KW Connect or KW mykw.kw.com.
I'll post a video tomorrow.
But they're there and they're valuable, right? Now, and we'll get back to components in a second. But I'm interested in Bold 2.0 is out,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Some of you are in it,
Yeah.
and apparently they give you a listing presentation.
They do. They give
I'm
me-
curious what that's all about, Gianna.
Well,
Share it with us,
Let me
Gianna.
show you. So I actually have it pulled up here. It's a PowerPoint, and it's kind of neat. This is actually half customized because I kind of pulled up some of my stats from Sarasota area. So I'm kind of showing you backwards here. This is the opening page. It kind of, depending on what you're doing, you can obviously change these settings, and it's all customizable, which is great. So you can put in whatever you do, just like in the one that we have online. Whatever you do, you can customize it too. So let me go forward here. So like I said, one of the things that I think is really important is setting expectations, and that's the first slide. Is we're going to do a seller survey. Here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what's happening next. The next step is the goals for the day, which if you've taken Bold at all before, you remember the goals of we're going to decide whether we're going to work together, what's going to cause it to sell. The same thing from Bold, but in this digital form. One of the things that I liked when I did Bold was he said that if they don't fill in the blank correctly, like if you say, oh, well, we're going to review, and they say, oh, the price, you go, that's right, your motivation to sell, and you keep going because you want them to agree with you all the time. So I just like that little bit. But, so you go through your steps here, and it's such a nice way to do it. And of course, you can use a digital pointer, you can put it up larger. I just brought it on my laptop because it was easier. So the critical questions, this is again setting those expectations. This is stuff you already went over in your pre-qualifications and your pre-listing presentation. Do you really want to sell your house? And it's, of course I want to sell my house, what they say, but we all know that's not always the case. But anyways, it breaks it down for you in such easy steps. And what I liked is I actually took out some slides that I didn't really feel applied to me or my team. But you also have your ability to put in like your market statistics. So I have this set up for this is Sarasota County, I think. So this is for part of Sarasota County. I think this was for South Venice. So this is just kind of breaking down the prices and really giving them an idea of, listen, this is what it's going to look like when we sell your house. And I think that's a really important statistic, and I think it sets expectations for what you're going to sell your house for. So when they say, well, I want $350,000 on my $250,000 house, you're like, well, here's what the market looks like, and well, I'm going to list it at $225, but I expect to get $225. Well, 99%, or 95%, depending on where you are, but this is what it's going to look like. And you're setting this all out right ahead for them. And I think it's nice and interactive, just like with that. And I mean, I think, on the listing presentations, you have to remember that this isn't the way it's going to go. You're not going to walk in and sit here and go through every slide. You have to continuously tell them, do you understand that? Are you ready to sign? And try to close, because some of them by the third slide they see, and you're like, so this is the price I want to put you at. They're like, okay, cool, let's sign. And you don't want to go, oh, hold on, I have 15 more slides to show.
I'm going to put you through these other things. I'll just sit there and shut up.
You have to keep in mind who you're talking to for any listing presentation and kind of go with that. But, and then you can say, what, I'm going to get to that in just a minute. And you can, quickly skip through whatever you need to skip through.
Wait, there's more.
Right, exactly. So, it goes through the contract, how the earnest money works. I like this particular presentation because it really tells them every step of how it's going to work. Here's what happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And I always end every email with, here's what's going to happen next. And this kind of does that and lays it out in a timeline for them, which I thought was really neat. And this is taken from top agents all over the country, not just Keller Williams agents. So
That's important. What happens next?
Right.
That's a great tagline. What happens next? And you're going to tell them.
Yeah.
Right? Set the expectations.
Exactly.
Right? Because they feel so lost.
Right.
It's already stressful for themselves, for them, right?
Yeah, and there's so much information coming at them, and that's again another reason. Like there are some people who want every detail and they want to write down every detail.
Yeah.
This makes it so you don't have to repeat yourself. It's right there for you, and they can write it down this way. You can say, you know what, I'm going to send you these slides. Take a break, however you need to do it. But this way you're sort of able to kind of tailor it to them. This kind of tells you about your team and how it works. This tells all the goals of Realtor. And one of the things we get is they think that we just put the sign in the yard and then maybe show up for an open house or two.
What are the four P's?
The 3 P's. They put it in the MLS. They place a sign in the yard, and they pray somebody else.
Yep.
Right.
And it used to be 4 P's. Put an ad in the paper. We don't do that.
Yeah,
anymore.
no.
We do that. We prospect daily for buyers.
Yeah,
I'm
There's a
aging
50.
myself.
So this kind of was, I really liked this slide. There's a similar one for the buyer side too, where it shows you all the different things that a realtor does behind the scenes. Just like, the photographers don't just show up and take the pictures, right? But everybody thinks for an hour and a half they earn $300. It's not really how it works, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, and you got to tell them, this is all the stuff we're going to do. We're going to be on the phone with other agents. We're going to be on the phone with customers in the area. We're dealing with the MLS, the homes lists, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of breaks down. This is also obviously customizable. I added in and took out some stuff too. Open houses wasn't on there, which I thought was weird. There was something else on here too that was on here that wasn't something that we do in this area. So it's all customizable, and then that you adds in more just because it's fun that way and interactive.
Some people like the visualization.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it gives them a good idea of what's
Especially
happening.
with the older people that
Right.
are selling their homes because they're getting too old and they want to downsize,
Mhm.
or they're going to go in a nursing home, or they're going to go wherever.
Yeah.
They want to sell their home. Them, they have no idea what selling a home is.
Yeah.
They want to see that visual. They want to see the prices and.
Yes.
Well, and even if they've already sold homes before, because we do get that
Yeah.
on a pretty consistent basis. Well, I've sold homes before, and
Yeah.
okay, well, did you sell any within the last 3 months here in Charlotte County?
Right.
Because it's always different, just
Yeah.
like the mortgage rates are always fluctuating, so is our job and our job description. And your particular property, it's gonna be a little bit different, every single one. I really like this, I'm in bold right now, so second domino is on Tuesday. I like that, and and you probably do too, once I actually have captured everybody at the seller and they have signed the listing agreement, like I would wait until they've already signed the paperwork and
Yeah.
be like, now here's what we're gonna be doing, because I don't know where I learned it, but I have incorporated into my listing presentation, I'm gonna set some expectations, and that's normally one of the first things that I say is, after I walk in, and I still take some of the old school things. I'm really excited to see what Bold 2.0 has to offer. But I really like the old stuff. Really works.
Yeah.
So
Jim took my scratch pad, but if I was up in front of a class and we write down I want to go back to that, but I want to ask you a question. Not about that. Yes, about that.
Okay.
Is your pricing presentation built into your listing presentation, or is it separate?
It is, in this you can build it in.
Okay.
And I've used this, I've only had the opportunity to use this twice because I
Yeah.
just finished Bold.
Right.
So, but when I did it, I did it with this, but kind of separately too, because I always leave them
Yeah.
why I'm pricing it. I bring my CMA,
Yeah.
and I bring, this is what's happening in the market. I also, and this is what I think is important about, again, with listing presentations, is something I didn't bring with me today that I've learned from when we were talking about Command and Kelly, was to bring examples of other homes in the area and have them price them.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is the most expensive, which is the least, and where do you think yours would be? Because
pricing
that's
presentation
important.
is a
Right.
whole nother. It's an art form, right? It's a
Yeah.
science all in itself. Having a great listing presentation is fantastic, but if you don't have the right pricing presentation,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think with that, again, it goes into the setting expectations. And one of the things that I learned from the first Bold I did was, if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, we're lowering the price. And that's an expectation I set right up front.
Yeah.
And I go in with the NAR statistics and say, listen, if we have 10 showings and no offers, or if we have 2 weeks and no offers, that means our price is too high. We need to do a reduction.
So let me bring up a point for anybody that's a new agent or doesn't have a lot of history. And this goes way back in the day when our listing presentations were black and white.
Were they all like chiseled too?
Chiseled out of stone, right? It was like Flintstone, right? But I remember saying to the broker, I'm 29 years old, I says, I haven't sold a house yet. I don't have any statistics. And it should have been obvious to me, it is now. Well, then you use the company statistics, right?
Right.
So when you're talking about, there's a term we use in Keller Williams called LORE, language of real estate. And we love to talk about our own numbers, but like I was talking to a new agent yesterday, he says, well, what am I gonna tell him? I says, well, I handed him our statistics, right?
Thing right here.
Well, we are one large team of 165 agents right here in Port Augusta and Port Charlotte, #1 in market share. Do you realize how many experts I have to go to ask questions and bounce ideas off of? So you're not just hiring me, we're all in this together, and you are arguably choosing the #1 market share company in the region. Now, we also have Keller Williams statistics that you can pull and get into your presentations, and these are probably some things that we should learn, everybody should learn to do, is get in with that language of real estate. The Keller Williams story, your local story, and then your story. But if you don't have a story, just don't put it in there. Right? I'm sure, Terrence, you're new, right? You don't have a story yet, right? Congratulations.
Thanks for putting them out there like that, though.
That's the first chapter in his story.
Yeah.
That's the first chapter of the story.
He's already closed on something. So.
Yeah, so congratulations on that.
And 2 listings that we're working.
Yep.
I'm just going to put this out there. To get to a listing presentation that him and I sat down with, he had one of my brochures, and he went up to a door that for sale by owner and knocked on the door, talked to the woman, and
they answered the door. They
I
saw you and stood
he's a
into the door.
good-looking guy. Of course, you're going to answer the door. But he handed that over to her, had a brief conversation. She reached back out to him. We got the listing appointment, and so.
But and that just shows too, if you're willing to do the work, the results will come.
They will come.
He's not looking for a magic pill, throwing money at Zillow for leads. He's willing to do the work, and it wasn't the first FSBO that he left it at. It wasn't the 10th probably. I don't know, because he was actively leaving those pamphlets every time he saw a FSBO. Then this one worked out.
And I haven't gotten one yet, so I'm the one. I made this brochure, right? And I've gone up to I don't know how many houses so far, and he got one.
And
I haven't even gotten
that's an old school
copy.
tactic that Mike Ferry was teaching about 30, 40 years ago, right? And those things never change. So the door knocking on FSBOs or the cold calling that nobody likes to do, including myself. We got a lot of great technology. It just enhances the way we lead generate, and you can, internet-based lead generation does come to fruition, but it's a lot longer down the road. Not, giving a brochure to a FSBO like Terrence did that's instant. The lead, the cold calls, the door knocking, that is more instant results than using technology.
Yeah, and I think that's the basic. I know this isn't really listing presentation, but the bottom line is you can fight the actual work as much as you want. Yeah. The bottom line is if you're not going to pick up the phone, or you're not going to knock on the door, or you're not going to sit 5 open houses a week until you get that first couple of sales, you're not going to have business.
You're not going to have the need to use a listing presentation.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's and that's all well and good. And we talk about the hours for cold calling or for doing your prospecting should be 9 to noon. It should be 3 hours a day. But if you don't have an appointment after that, you should still be lead generating.
Okay.
And if you get 4 in the first hour, keep on going.
Yeah,
3 hours.
I'm going out. I'm going out for lunch if that happens.
Yeah.
Don't listen to David.
So there's 2 very strong formats. You got a digital format, a print format. You're probably going to use some of that digital format. I'm just thinking you could probably embed testimonial videos in.
Oh yeah,
things,
they have.
Imagine what you can do with that.
They have. They even put in the Keller Mortgage information is in here. Give it a second.
Yeah.
It's a little slow.
Yeah, what I'll probably do is for the people that are not here where I can sit right in front of, that's where I still have to think about it a little bit, because again, this is the first time I've seen it. That'll be what I'll be able to email people. I don't know, I just feel really comfortable with this.
Yeah.
And I'll bring that along.
It's nice to leave that behind. So what Amanda does for our team is the Matterport that we use for marketing and the website that we build for marketing. That's where she has the iPad to kind of show the technology. I mean, that's awesome,
That is
and there's
great.
so many ways that you can use the electronic presentation, especially for people that can't sit in front of you.
Let me ask you guys a question, and sometimes even the best presentation, the best demeanor, you built rapport, you both have two Great Danes, and you guys are gonna hang around at the park, but sometimes it still comes down to price and commission. Do you guys have as a component in your listing presentation, a menu of services with different commission structures attached to
No.
it? That's interesting.
So we've talked about it as a team, and we do have that 14-step marketing plan in there, which, you know, the things that get them typically are the Matterport, the property website, some of the things that we do that set us apart from other agents, some other agents. And if they start saying, well, so-and-so is doing it at 4, so-and-so is doing it at 4.5, and we go, okay, take 3 items off that list that you don't want.
So it's funny you say this. There's that menu of services, right?
But, okay, so I haven't had to do that.
Yeah, she hasn't had to yet, but I mean, we're prepared.
Just so we're clear.
Right.
I'm saying by a menu of services,
Yeah.
right?
So.
For 6% we do this, for 5%
Yeah.
it's this, for 4% it's
I-
this.
Well, I was always
I
taught
think-
not to,
Yeah.
your commission would not, hopefully not be negotiable.
Well, and that's kind of where I leave
That's
it. It's-
Amanda's thing.
For me, and I would say it's probably the same for you. It's not even my commission isn't negotiable. My value isn't negotiable.
That's awesome.
I want to have every one of my customers service the same, so that I keep getting customers and they know what to expect as far as my service. I don't want to have a listing listed too long because, and this is my first year, and I have had listings that I let sit too long because I was afraid to negotiate on price, you know, to get them to come down on price and stuff, or I was afraid to say, listen, this is what you need to do, or I'm not going to deal with you anymore. And those were horrible, and they sucked away a lot of my money and my time, and you know, my time that I could have been prospecting other leads that would have generated me money essentially. So I'm just not willing to negotiate on those services. And if they want to deal with somebody who's willing to negotiate with those services, then that's not the customer that I want to deal with, is what I've learned very quickly.
Remember, you're not picking the listing to work. You're not saying, I'm going to work with this listing. You're working with that. You got to decide you're going to work with that client.
Right.
The listing may be beautiful,
Right.
right? Do we want to work with that person?
Well, especially I think with expires, there's always a reason they didn't sell. Sometimes it's because of the seller.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know, and you have to go, you know what, I'm not going to work with that person because it's not going to sell if they're not going to be reasonable. And if they're not ready to be reasonable with you at a listing presentation, they're not ready to be reasonable with you to work on the sale.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're probably diving into like what's going to be going on next week for scripts and objections and things like that. I have absolutely walked away from a listing before. I'm like, you know what, we can't come together with price.
Yeah.
Now, there have been, you know, more than I would like to say where I've taken, you know, a little bit more overpriced, but more recently, I'm writing it into, like Gianna mentioned, if we don't have any showings within 2 weeks or an offer within 3 weeks, we're writing it into the listing agreement. And so I'm telling them, setting the expectations. So when we know that you're on the high end, a little bit over the high end where I came in with my price range, Mr. Seller. So I already know I'm going to be calling you in 3 weeks, and and one of my listings that's in a villa in Northport right now. They were expecting a phone call because they knew that we did price it a little bit higher. And the commission thing too, yeah, I've had certain people that are less than 6%, and they wanted to give their house to somebody else. And you know, I've calculated the dollars before in front of people, and then I've said to them, you know, if I do bring the buyer, of course 100% of nothing is nothing. You know, we can definitely try to negotiate on your behalf so you can get more money in your pocket, Mr. Seller, but for right now, to sign this listing agreement and for everything that I've had to offer you that you've already mentioned to me that you're really excited about for me doing the job for you, we're signing the listing agreement at 6%.
And actually, I'll say I actually do that. If they sell the house with me and I bring the buyer and they buy the next house with me, I will give them
Sure.
a small.
Yeah, don't get in the trap of, but I'm gonna buy something through you too, and then just drop your commission.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Because they're
Do
locked
it
in.
on the next-
Yeah.
That's what they're there for.
Well, and also, I also won't work with a buyer that doesn't sign a buyer's agreement.
Right.
That's a whole other.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I always, because there's always these what ifs, and we all have them in
Yeah.
any aspect of our life. So when the seller is thinking about, well, what if this, that, and the other, Mr. Seller, you know what, I'm not gonna put the cart before the horse. Right now, we're talking about your house,
Yeah.
we're talking about the value that I have for you, and what I'm gonna do with selling your house at the best price. So right now, put the pen to paper, put me to work, and let's roll with it. And then we'll kind of reevaluate things later.
To Amanda's point about what she was saying about how, you know, we'll tell them at the table that, yeah, certainly we would never hold up a deal over a commission, like, you know, 100% of nothing, blah, blah. We had a listing where that conversation came up, and, you know, we told them that, you know, we're deal makers, not breakers, so if we need to give in to make it work, you know, 100% of nothing is nothing, that whole thing. And by the time we got that house sold, and they were good with that. They're like, you know, I trust that if we need you to, you guys will work with us, blah, blah, blah. By the time we got the house sold, we had worked so hard for them, that conversation never even came up.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's your listing presentation definitely needs to, by the time you're sitting down in front of them and you're getting to the contract part, you have to have shown them your value. Otherwise, they are going to negotiate commission, because at that point, if you haven't proven to them why you're worth 6% or whatever, then you need to go back through your presentation and fix that, because your presentation definitely needs to show what your value is.
And this will probably come up in your scripts and objections, but one of my favorite conversations around negotiating your commission is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're telling me, you're asking me to negotiate my commission down, and if I just give in and say yes, how hard do you think I'm really going to work to negotiate?
That's one of my favorites.
That's how I feed my family, and if I'm willing to give in the only money that I make, how hard am I going to work to negotiate your money?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
I
one of my
like that
favorite
one, too.
objection handlers for that.
Well, and the one thing too, to kind of guide the seller back on the right track, and for the most part, it's come on via telephone conversations more so often than not. The first question is not about, hey, how much is my home worth, or hey, how long you been in the business? Hey, can you do this for 4 or 5% commission? That's the first question. And I've learned, I actually am like, is that really the only thing that you're worried about, is my commission?
Mm-hmm.
And silence. And if they don't say anything, wouldn't you like to know how much money your house is worth? I mean, how much equity maybe you have had in it? Or why are you selling?
Yeah.
It kind of, it makes their brains
Change.
change, their pattern change.
Yeah.
Because they're so set in that commission part of it.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that I learned from one of the people that I watch do scripts is they, you know, when they come to that and they're like, well, how about you reduce your commission? And he goes, listen, the bottom line is, how much money do you need to get in your pocket when we close this deal? If I can get what I need to get over that, then what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's where, and on that note, that's where that killer mortgage comes back into role. I mean, if you're going to be able to put the buyer that comes to their home through Keller Mortgage, you've just saved that buyer $5,000, which means you can sell your house. It does roll in, actually, because you can now sell your house for $5,000 more and pay my commission. Because sometimes the buyers do think, well, I'm kind of paying I'm paying that commission, but it's not coming out of their pocket, but they're saying, I'm paying more because there's a real estate commission trapped into that price, or inside that price. But
That's all they see is dollar signs.
Yeah.
We just had 2 deals back to back, to Gianna's point about, you know, as we started getting closer to the end, or in the negotiation, no, it was closer to the end, in the negotiation, and they said, well, if you can, you know, we need to get this amount, and they wanted us to drop a point or whatever to make it work, and we were pretty adamant that we were solid and we could negotiate this to that, and they're paying us the full commission that we agreed to, and they're clearing that.
Actually,
you know, a lot of times if you just show them on the net sheet, that can
well, and that's
save a
another
lot.
thing too that I do bring, and that's not in here, that it's something I want to add into it. Like I said, I haven't gotten to really work this out yet, but I usually will bring, you know, especially I have a couple that are short sales. And like we've gotten to the table and it's been like, well, you guys got to cut your commission. I'm like, listen, I've been working this for 6 months. I'm not cutting anything. Someone else is going to bring that money to the table.
I'm working at $1 an hour right now.
Exactly. But that's just it, is you have to decide your value, and then you have to show your value. And those people have listed with me again, even though that particular short sale fell through due to the bank. But they know, and they're like, no, we don't want you to cut your commission. We know what you're doing for us, and that's it. And just that's how you get more listing presentations, because that's how you're going to get referrals. Is if you show your value continuously to your customers. So if you're not working for or if you're doing 5% work and you're taking 5%, well, that's what you're going to end up getting back in referrals, is other pains in the butt who want a discount.
And don't be afraid to. I've gone back and forth sometimes. Sometimes the first objection handler that I give is not the one that's going to make them listen to me. So like the worst case scenario, luckily so far, where I've just been blunt. Let me be blunt with you, Mr. Salary. I am taking on this listing. I'm deciding to sell your house, and I'm putting up X amount of dollars for marketing, and I don't even really know 100% because we just don't know. My crystal ball has always been broken. I don't really know if I'm going to actually get paid at the end of the day. So you need to understand my viewpoint, where I am doing this as a service to you, so I should get paid for working. Don't you agree? And I always end with a question.
Yeah.
Don't you agree? What do you think about that, or whatever? So they have to respond back.
We're normally shelling out, between $500 and $1,000.
Yeah.
In
Like
that first week of a listing.
Yeah.
Does that scare you guys to have to throw out that kind of money in marketing dollars? Does that scare you as a new agent?
At the beginning, it used to.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I don't know exactly how that gets allocated.
So typically $150 to $250, depending on the size of the house, for the photographer.
Yes.
Which, when you're new, I did all that work, but now that we're at a point where it's a budget for it, the amount of time it saves is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but that's where that part gets allocated. I might, I might spend 100 in Facebook ads or something like that to really boost it hitting the market. And then honestly, you gotta factor all the dues that you pay and everything. I mean, this is when you think about it from a smart business mind. All the dues that you pay, you gotta allocate a certain percentage of that to every deal that you do, right?
And the miles on your car,
Yeah.
and the signs in the yard, and the wear on the signs, and whatever. The time you're at any open house, any of that stuff, that's all
Your
money.
hourly rate, and it doesn't even have to be like, we do have the funds to allocate for marketing online and print out and things like that, but it's still your hourly pay to just be here in the office and picking up the phone or just door knocking and everything. And that's a really great way. I can't remember which class it was, but if you have your marketing dollars of $100 a month or $200 a month, you're going to find the best way to use that as resourcefully as possible, albeit Facebook ads or old school stuff, whatever.
Well, hey, you got questions? Lorianne?
What do you pay for photography?
It's like $150 to $250
Yeah,
depending on
$150
the
to
property.
$250.
Do you not
Now that-
charge the owners for it?
No.
No, and see, that's
See,
so the point that they.
last few that I've done, I've charged the seller for the photography.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Now that's something that is a practice, not everywhere, but for example, they'll take the listing agreement and they'll say that we have a $495 marketing agreement, and we're going to use those funds to get this thing up and running. And oh, by the way, when the property closes, we'll rebate that off your commission. And some people, did you rebate it off the commission?
No, you sent a check.
Donata!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
here's
good,
you.
good for you.
The last three things, the
But-
last three, I charged them for the photography, and they sent a check.
But see, to that point, I mean, that even so, because even with yours, you're asking them to pay that up front, even though they get reimbursed. So that just shows our value even more.
Yeah.
That, I mean, actually, there's a lot of value in being able to get them to pay for it up front. I don't mean to knock that.
The people that I've worked with actually know me
Yeah.
from long ago, and
Sure.
they know my reputation.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess they feel
Somebody who
comfortable in doing that.
When you're chasing expires and stuff like that, though, like typically somebody who's just meeting you is not going to
Right.
agree to that $500 out of their pocket up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
So.
Unless they're 100% completely convinced.
Yeah.
That's a good way of diagnosing if they're convinced or motivated that their house is going to sell.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, if I was motivated to sell my home and priced properly, I'd write a check for $1,000 knowing I was gonna get it back.
Well, and I think my thing with that only, yeah, I agree with you to that. My only thing with that is, if they don't agree to it, I'm still shelling out the money, because again, if it's whenever you
have to
advertise
do
a
it.
house, you're advertising yourself too.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, I mean, we literally use our, past mailings as part of our marketing plan, because we show that, and I door knock with those pictures, and I've had listings where they had pictures that weren't bad, but they weren't the pictures that I usually like, and my photographers that I like, and I've gone back and had them read that, even though I had perfectly good pictures before. Just because I think that again, you have to continuously be marketing your value before you get in that door.
Yeah. Well, building your brand, right? I mean, all the marketing that you do helps to build your brand, and your brand is ultimately, at some point, becomes a big factor in closing those listing contracts.
Exactly.
It's all good stuff, man.
So Lorianne, to dig into that a little bit more, so the photographer, like for our business, we hire a photographer. He's typically $125 to $250, depending on the size of the house. But he doesn't do drone work. So if it's waterfront or if it's acreage property, then I'm about another $150 for drone work.
Well,
So it
he
just
built
depends
some
on
of
what
our
you're
signs
doing.
too, which is not cheap for.
Yeah, I spent a
for
weekend building
acreage.
signs. That was fun.
Yeah,
Do what you gotta
there's
do.
a lot of good photographers out there, and if I've gone through several to kind of figure out, and I have 2, 3 that I work with, kind of regular. It's kind of like who can come do stuff fastest. And then another part of my listing package is actually we've started putting the MLS waiver in there, so that we have 3 to 5 days usually to get the photographers in there, because they are booked. But you want to make sure you get the right photographer, because cell phone pictures just don't cut it.
And we have 7 days, and that's something
Yeah.
that I don't wait until we actually get to the listing agreement.
no, I
I've
follow
learned
by
to
now,
talk. I've learned to talk about it while we're in the middle of conversation. Like, oh, by the way, when you do list with me, I'm going to ask you for up to 7 days, because we need to get all of our internet marketing done, our package done. To once it hits the MLS, we want to make sure it's in its best light. Does that sound good to you? Yeah, it does. Okay, well, back to price or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like putting little
little digs
in.
Yeah.
But
Let me ask you a question. What kind of, and it's getting better every day, what kind of technology tools are you putting into your presentation, or have you gotten to that point yet of talking about, and by the way, we have this thing called Lead Accelerator with our KW Command that is going to allow us to do social media posts and direct mail campaigns with really the click of a button. Have you incorporated that in your presentation?
I haven't yet.
I haven't yet, and the big thing that I've incorporated is the one great piece that we've invested in is the Matterport, which people are like, Matter what?
Yeah.
And that's where I crack out my iPad and say, most buyers are looking online, and so we want to be able to capture them. So this is, a value proposition that we have. I do have, our app, online sites. You're going to have your own personal website. And luckily for me, I'm the old school. I have no idea what this guy does. I love the fact, if I didn't have Brett, I probably wouldn't even know what to do with myself, because he takes care of that aspect of it. And unfortunately for all y'all out there, he's mine. But he's willing to help out in any way.
It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. There's so much love.
Did you have another question, Lauren?
Where do you get your personal websites on?
Brett builds them.
So we subscribe to a service that does a lot of stuff for us, but honestly, the property websites are going to be part of Command. They're actually about this far away from being ready.
Yeah.
So just
So
imagine,
it'll be included in the technology fee you're already paying.
Just imagine you have a listing that somebody, rather than having somebody, tell me if I'm wrong here, or speaking out of touch here, or out of reality, rather than somebody having to go to Realtor.com or Zillow or KW.com/this/that, they can just go www, not we use it anymore, 123 Main Street, besthomeintown.com, or whatever you call it, and it's a property-specific website.
Yeah.
Use QR codes and all that kind of fun stuff
So
to
that's
put
in
on
the-
your signs.
Yeah. So that's in the
Put
marketing
on your sign
plan.
riders. That works well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So what we're using, the IVR system, right, where you call the number, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So Twilio, which is the text service that's being incorporated into Command, we were already using that for another marketing company that we work with, for our sign writers. So they can either scan the QR code on there, they can text, or they can call a number. If they text the number, then they get back the link that has the property website. So right on their phone, they can go right to it and start going through photos, Matterport.
And you're not at risk of them clicking on something else because they're on that
I'm
website.
already capturing
Right.
them in my domain.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it's changed, but Lori Ann, back when I was listing a lot of property, I don't think it cost me that more than a few bucks to buy that domain for that property.
No, we buy a domain for every property. I was buying .coms.
Yeah.
Right.
I was
They
doing-
tend to be about $15.
I think I was doing
per-
.infos.
I'm doing .infos.
Okay.
If it's a premier property, a waterfront,
Give it
or
a
something that's
.com.
got a higher value, a luxury price range, then we'll do a .com, obviously. But most
Right through GoDaddy, right?
yeah, GoDaddy, because I know how that system works.
Yeah.
And a .info is $2.99.
Yeah.
And there
I
Is
did-
it the address itself that you're buying?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And
So
then
when the address is sold, what do you do?
I haven't
Come to
really
me and see if I want to sell it back to you. No, it's true. If it's already been purchased and then a person is now, I let them die. Like I don't renew them. Once
Yeah.
I've sold that house, then I don't renew it. So it should be available again.
I
at
don't
some
think we
point.
really had that issue too much, right? Tell me if I'm wrong.
And then
No.
so you pay $3 for the domain name. You
Yes.
go out and spend 10 or 12 bucks for the name for the sign riders.
Mm-hmm.
You throw them on your signs. You throw them on your marketing materials with the QR codes and all that. I mean, it's specific to their property, right? And
that really wows them when they can
That's a
see
wow.
that a website is built around their property
Right.
only.
that's a wow factor.
And that helps in your marketing. So now when I do ads on Facebook, and which also gives us Instagram, right? And anytime I do those ads, I'm directing traffic to that property website. If I'm doing an open house, anything like that, it all directs to that property website.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's so much you can do with that. So.
And your two favorites are Instagram and Facebook ads?
Yeah, Facebook ads, Instagram is part of it because Facebook
Yeah.
owns Instagram.
You can decide
get
if you're
that-
running it on
You get that
Instagram.
automatically
Yeah.
at no additional charge. Yeah, you decide whether you want to go to Instagram or not, which you should,
Yeah.
because the younger buyers are there.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about LinkedIn or any of the others?
I don't think it makes sense to market to LinkedIn because it's just other realtors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
I do a little bit, because on Instagram you can link you just literally click a little button and it sends it to Facebook and Twitter, so I just do that too. You can send it to Tumblr too, but I don't think anybody's buying houses off Tumblr yet. So I just do Facebook and Twitter.
I've never heard of it there.
Yeah, so I put them on those, and I usually do and it really just goes to my friends, but I'll do a quick Snapchat video when I'm in front of a house, like, hey, look, I'm at this new listing, or hey, look, I'm at check out this open house, go to my Facebook to look for more, something like that. But Facebook and Instagram are the ones that I think most people are using on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know. And and I've learned to do, preview videos, or hey, look, we're at this great listing, watch for it tomorrow morning, or something like that,
She's great at that. And that's what all of us need to be doing is teaser videos on Facebook Live and stuff like that, because there's so much traction from that.
Yeah, in fact, I was having a conversation with somebody who has a photography and marketing company, and what they do, he's like, oh, you have to have good content. And I kind of corrected him. I was like, really? You just have to have any content on a consistent basis. So I've just sort of made it. I have a bunch of stuff that's preloaded to come up. It's scheduled into it, so it's there's going to be one that pops up at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning that says Happy Father's Day. I put that in 6 months ago. I don't have to even think about it. It's going to happen. But then, if I'm at a house or something, or I see something, I share that and try to do that on a consistent basis too, because then people are going to like it, and then you can tell them to like your page, and now they're seeing, and all their friends are seeing every time you put an ad out. So it's, trying to get your views boosted that way, and just consistent content. Not necessarily great content, consistent content, and eventually the great content comes out.
Because if you're doing, video is king right now, and it has been for the last 3 years, and we're fortunate that we're in a market where still almost nobody does it in our field. So even though we're 3 years behind the 8 ball, we still have plenty of opportunity. So anything that you're doing on video, even if it's not the greatest, and you don't need take after take. It needs to be authentic.
Yeah, and quick. The live videos are the best thing. I used to be like, oh my God, my hair, it's always in a bun. And I'm always like, oh, but it's always in a bun, so who cares? But
Consistent
yeah,
marketing.
exactly. So
That's
I really do have like a
hair
look that's going on here. So I finally was like, you know what, I'm just going to take this video, check this out, especially with having the insights on Kelly, like when I'm at a place taking a picture that you're there, showing that you're a local person to a market is important, and that's, I think, what you're accomplishing. And then, who was it, Bill Kennedy, who did that class in Punta Gorda, he said, most of your posts should be about the area or something interactive, like asking a question or a funny joke or something like that. And then like 1 in 3 should be about an actual listing or an ad or something like that.
Well, we were just at a roundtable last night where there was somebody who had gotten some feedback from a post that they had put out, and when her content was about, here's what me, ask yourself, is that what you would want to look at and listen to for 10, 20, 30 seconds, whatever? No. It's got to be coming from contribution, which is really what we do in the first place. And then, just something off the wall that make you, what?
And I think a lot of agents make that mistake in the beginning because they feel like they're being told to market on Facebook. So, it was, I can do this for you, I can do that for you. And they think in their mind, because they're saying, I can do this for you, that it's coming from contribution, but really they haven't given their audience anything that they really want.
Yeah, think outside of the bubble. A really smart man told me this last night, and he's like, you're in a jar and you're looking on the outside. You got to kind of have to look from the outside in, and don't be stuck in that bubble. Maybe backing off that. That's cool.
Can you guys tell us exactly what you bring to the listing? I don't know if you went over that.
Oh yeah, I think that was the first thing. John?
It's really, I bring everything, and then I don't use 80% of it, honestly, because I think every person, you show up and you don't know what you're going to walk into, so you just have to kind of, Boy Scout motto, be prepared, so like I tell them about how we market. I make phone calls daily, I tell them about that, so I kind of show them like, look, I'm going to call 100 people, so I might bring like an old call list or something like that. I show them the things that we door knock with on a regular basis to talk about, to bring buyers in on a regular basis. And I use, sometimes if I door knock them, like, we met because I gave you the hurricane brochure last year, so that I'm out there looking for people all the time. I show them the postcards that we put out that help us continuously bring people in. And then I bring the statistics from the MLS for that area. And I usually show them on Kelly just because it's impressive. I'm like, look, here's your market area. See, that's what this says too. So they kind of have an idea what's going on in their market. So market statistics, I think, are important. And this kind of gives them examples of your photography and that kind of thing. I might show them some of our Facebook information. That's something that I'm putting into our presentation, is just screenshots basically of our Facebook page and our Instagram stuff, so that they're seeing that we're putting that stuff out there. But unless they're asking to see that stuff, I probably won't really go into it, just because they kind of have an idea of what people do. I think knowing that you're daily prospecting is probably the biggest give, and seeing some examples of your photography, or like the Matterport thing, like showing that the kind of stuff that's going to stick out, like that's more important than all of this, except to show that you do work. Because a lot of people, again, think we just put a sign in the yard, put it on the MLS, and call it a day. Right.
So, and what I bring is I bring my listing presentation, which is, the guide that we mentioned before. I bring that, I bring the Cloud CMA, I've got the quick CMA that I bring the listing agreement filled out as much as possible. I primarily deal with expired, so I know what appliance is, and we can tweak things if we have to. Listing agreement, MLS waiver of entry, the seller's disclosure, the MLS data sheet. I bring a notebook, and I take at least, sometimes it's only one page, depending on how big or small the property is, but pretty much at least 2 pages of notes, so they can see that I'm listening to what they're telling me, and that has been a real big factor.
I also, sorry to interrupt, but I also think it's important to bring the property appraisers
That's
because I forgot to say that, but I always bring it, and I make them look at it, because I want them to know that I know what's going on in their house.
I bring that. Sometimes if it's a trust, I'll bring a copy of the warranty deed. I do bring a copy of their latest tax bill as well, and as well as the seller net estimated proceeds that I already have filled out with the price range that I kind of want it to be in. And then with my iPad, then I have the visuals there for the Matterport drone videos and things like that. If I have to tap into that, but every listing appointment.
If you've got a 1,400 square foot house on the appraiser site, and you walk in and it looks like it's 2,000, now we gotta have a conversation about permitted work. Right?
Yeah, or they're like, oh, it's a 4-bedroom, and you're like, is it a 4-bedroom? Because that's a garage, not a bedroom. You know, you have to know what that is.
We have a new moderator.
I think it's really important to say, to go in and to remember, and this is something they said in bold, but it's very true. You know, the work isn't necessarily the 15 to 45 minutes to 2 hours you're at the listing presentation. The work is the research and putting it together ahead of time. You know, and that's another thing that they don't realize that we're doing is when we talk to buyers is we're pre-qualifying on the phone and that kind of stuff. So the more research you show you did when you walked in there, that you already know all the stuff going on in that house, the more they know that you're going to take them seriously and you're going to make sure that the people who walk into their house are serious.
No.
And it's the littlest thing too, when I'm like, oh, and your taxes last year, they were $1,235. Well, I'm not really sure. They were. I did the research.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys check Zillow?
I may go
Yes.
to I may
Take that
go
with
with
you?
a listing.
I don't take it with me.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so what do you do with it? You just use it to be prepared, or?
Yeah, I want to know, because that's where they look. So I look
Yeah.
everywhere they're going to look. I want to know what they saw. I want to see I look at the Zillow listings that are in their areas. When they say that Jim's house down the street is listed for this, I can be like, well, that's what the Z estimate says it should be listed for. But he's not a realtor, so let's talk about what's real.
And I've actually,
Yeah.
I haven't had to dive
That's
into
how,
that.
I love that. That's how you gotta be with them.
All of the listing appointments that I've been on, well, ever, especially as of late, it seems like Zillow's coming up a little bit more and more, and I have a certain stance with it where I really don't care for Zillow too much. And I express that for XYZ reasons when I'm talking to Mr. Seller, because those estimates are not right. And do you know that, what is it, the CEO or CFO of Zillow, his own house was estimated incorrectly? No, I didn't know that. Well, I know that. That's why you're going to be working with a professional like myself, and I'm going to be advertising it on those platforms where we're going to sell your house correctly and for the right price. So I haven't had to dive into all that jazz.
So yesterday in the class with that Wayne Weathersby, were you there?
Not I mean.
So he said, you know, he goes in with that information, and when they bring it up, he says, well, yes, so the houses in your neighborhood are ranging from like the 220 that Zillow thinks it's worth, as if it was new construction, walk-in ready, to, you know, it's 175,000, might be a fixer-upper in your community.
Well, and
So, you know, you're probably somewhere in between.
well, my question to the seller would be, did a representative from Zillow come to your house to do their own estimate
Right,
on
so
it?
that's why he
No.
puts the Zillow number kind of at this end of the spectrum. It's,
Yeah.
it's like a gas gauge, you know.
Yeah.
So then he throws a box in there, and so yours is probably, so you know how much, you know, if you see some deferred maintenance or something, he'll say, well, you know, what do you think it would cost? You know, your roof is 15 years old.
A lot of them are here in Charlotte County too.
That what Amanda just said came from the guy that came down to teach us the tech class when we were out at the
Beach complex?
The beach complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Younger. Yeah, and that's what Zach said. He's like, oh, okay, so Zillow sent somebody out here then to look at your property and give you a accurate. Well, no.
No.
Oh, okay then. So getting back to my professional CMA.
Yeah, and that's really, because that's them trying to drive you off of your script, you know what I mean? And that really is a script. It's, yeah, that's a thing that can happen, but that's not a person, so let's go back to what people are going to do, because people are the ones who are going to buy your house, you know? And that's, again, that's one of the things I find really helps is I will pull other houses that have sold in the area and be like, where's your house in this, you know, is it in this area or this here, or is it over here? So that you go, well, that one sold for this much, so that's probably where your house is going to sell.
Do you include the MLS info of houses that are currently available around them?
For the CMA or for houses that are no.
Just to have them?
No, I have. Yeah, I usually take like 5 that are as much like theirs as possible, so I can show, because you want to talk about what your competition is. Yeah, and that's I love that line from the last bold. It's this is a beauty contest, and here's the contenders.
Because what I've run into in the past is, you know, they'll be like, well, the house down the street, yeah, he's asking that, but he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, da da da. And I've actually been armed with the sheets before with the photos, because it may have been 10 years was the last time that the guy you're talking to was in that house, and now it's beautiful granite and tile floors, and you're armed with that, and you're like, well, yeah, he's asking that much because he's got all this and you don't.
Right.
Right, and don't be afraid, just Tuesday, I was sitting across from this really great, seller, and they started talking about, well, that house right over there, and I said, when did it sell for that? Oh, November, or maybe last July, and I said, I don't care, I was blunt, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
That's great, thank you,
Yeah.
so-and-so, I don't care about that.
We've
And
gone like
really,
through 4
you shouldn't
different
care about that
markets.
either, because
We're concentrating on your house.
what's going on right now,
Right.
the appraiser is not gonna go back to last November or
No.
last
We've
July.
gone into a home with, property records that their property taxes weren't paid in 2 years.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
and You try to explain to them, like, okay, so why your property taxes are not, and I think in the state of Florida, and they say that if 7 years, somebody can actually put a bid on the taxes and get your house, but I've never used that
Well,
line.
after 2 years, they can get
Yeah.
the tax
The
deed,
tax deed.
right?
Yeah.
I've never used that line, but I always try to
Right.
make them pay their taxes if they wanna put, otherwise they're gonna pay it out of their sales. anyway,
There's
so it's
well, and
not-
that's for me. There's certain things
that's-
that it's
that's
like,
no
hey, do you
problem.
understand that you have past due taxes? And they're like, yeah, that's all right. I'm probably not going to take that listing. Like,
Yeah.
there's just
And I haven't
There's
taken
certain-
them expired.
there's a certain level of crazy that I'm just not willing to do anymore. There really is. Like, you heard about our friend.
Oh,
who-
yes, I know.
The Masons are the reasons he's not selling his house. So we don't work with him anymore because
Yeah, yeah.
they were out to get him. So
Well, you
Those
got it.
Freemasons, they've been doing it for thousands of years.
I bought a lot next to my house. The guy didn't pay his taxes for like 3 years or whatever, and I had tried to get in touch with him for the last 5 or 6 years before that, because his trees were, in danger. And anyway, make a long story short, I get a phone call in the middle of the day on a weekend, and it's the owner of that property. I'm like, dude, you know, that's how I spoke
That's my
to him.
word.
I said to him, I said, I tried to send you letters.
Yep.
I've tried to call you, no response. I've got all your letters here returned that you never responded to. What are you gonna do with the lot?
mhm.
And he's like, well, this and that. I said, well, he said, you're 3 years behind your taxes right now. I said, and it's best, in your best interest, either to sell the lot or pay the taxes or do something, because I'm gonna have your lot for nothing
Right.
if those trees fall on my house.
Yeah.
We have a question.
Yeah, we have a question.
This is
Thank you,
great.
Joni. So Joni's asking, do you do a 1 or 2 step listing presentation? So do you go back a second time with comp? So you go look at it first, right? Is your first step to know what the upgrades are and all that stuff, and then go back and work
With the
your
price
numbers, and then
presentation.
come back with the comps and a recommended price.
I try not to.
Yeah.
You
No,
do
I
it
try to
one
do it one
step
time.
listing appointment?
Rarely ever.
And
I
why?
have a decent idea when I walk in, like, of a range of where it's going to be. It's really finalizing the details. You know what I mean? It's like when you walk in there, if you're blown away because it's gorgeous, then you're all right. We're at the top end of that price range. If you're blown away because there's a hole in the floor,
Right.
then it's I haven't had one yet where I've been like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing here because this is something I wasn't expecting. But if you have an idea of what things are priced at the market, you usually can kind of figure it out.
And with our technology though too,
Yeah.
is we have the ability right there to go ahead and tweak some of the
Yeah.
stuff. It's bringing the bulk of, our value proposition to the table. And there are some agents that like to be the last person to present. I like to be the first person, because
Yeah.
I'll call those other guys that you have an appointment with and let them know they can bring the fire, because now I'm being the representative for the seller. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Terrence, and then
Yeah,
I have
question.
something I'm going to share too.
Now, I was just wondering, if for those sellers that you decide to walk away from, not work with, is it important to you to have a referral?
No. I haven't met anybody for a couple of them that I really want to do that to. And the ones where it was just a matter of they needed some time to come around to the fact that I was the one who was going to be able to sell their house, I never walk away like, you're an idiot, I'm not dealing with you. I'm like, you know what, I
That's
just
a good
don't think
thing.
if we're going to work together, you know what I mean? And I'll walk out, and I've had them call me back 3-6 months later and be
Yeah.
like, so I signed with somebody else, it didn't work out, now I understand what you were saying, let's work together. I had one who did that to me, and I told her I would list it for 8% because I knew that she was a pain. Yeah, I literally, and I was like, and 5% that's probably going to go to the buyer's agent because that's how much I knew she canceled contracts out of the blue. I knew she was a pain. I was like, this is how it's going to work.
Well, and you know, that's a possible opportunity to refer to somebody else. I mean, what I would normally, if I was able to refer out to somebody that might have more enhancements and more ways to market that property or whatever, that would be one thing. But when it comes down to it, you know, if my stance is I pretty much can gauge who would be a decent person, good fit to work with. And normally I would walk away because we're just not meeting together on price, or they're not doing the things that I have, you know, advised them that they need to do for the property. I stay in touch with them, and they will come back around. I kind of let them go off on their own way and have their own, the seller have their own experience, because if for some reason at the end of the day they're still, some people are just really difficult to work with, and then they're working with somebody else within our market center, and then they're just going to have a negative impact on that person and then our market center. So,
So are you talking like if maybe it was just a personality?
Gianna spoke on back taxes and stuff like that, where you said if they wouldn't pay them, then you wouldn't want to work with them, and that's understandable. But in that case, maybe someone else would.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have.
And no, in that situation, I don't know if I've had back taxes specifically. I mean, I've had, before I kind of learned about short sales, I'd run into some of those and I'd sent them to somebody else. There's an agent in Bradenton that I know very well, and if I get my foot in the door and then the person, I know Bradenton, but like not super well, but he works in that market center up there. So like if they're like, you know what, I want somebody who's really local to this area, like no problem, I'm gonna call Jacob, and he's gonna be here tomorrow, and he's the right agent for you. In that case, then yes, I would do a referral. But if it's because they're not willing to budge on price, or they're not willing to be realistic about the condition of their property, or they don't want us to put a sign in the yard because they don't want the neighbors to see that their house is for sale or something silly like that, I'm not going to put that on somebody else.
Right. And,
you know?
And when it's happened to our team as well, that's what it's been. It's been, you have realized that there's red flags that went up.
Yeah.
That one of the most recent was the seller wanted us to compromise our ethics and not let a tenant know that the house was for sale. We can't do that.
Right.
And she violated her listing agreement by bringing a tenant in after we signed anyway, because the listing agreement says she's supposed to let us know.
Right.
So
I'm not gonna say, Paris, you have this great listing.
Yeah, we weren't gonna put that on anybody. Like, if somebody else got it and was able to make her happy and make money, that's great. But I didn't want to refer somebody that I cared about to it.
Right.
You know.
I just wanted to bring up when we were talking about pricing this really cool strategy that John Prescott talked about in Bold last time, and I haven't got a chance to try it yet, but I want to so bad. So he brings a yellow pad of paper in, right, and a red Sharpie, and he writes down the prices of the homes, like, you know, that he brings in that are comps. So let's say there's one that's $193, there's one that's, you know, $205, and there's one that's $207.9, and he'll say, okay, so Amanda, where do you think your house fits in on that? And then you're gonna say, oh, I think it's 225.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Say,
Okay, 225.
He'll hold it for a second. He'll go, I just don't see it.
Right.
And then he'll just sit there and wait for them to go, all right, 206. Deal. Thank you very much. Let's sign. You know, I think that's such a great script, because that's that showing you're in control, but kind of letting them think that they're in control and going, I'm the expert here, and it's just not going to happen. You know.
I don't see
and he
it
said it has to be the yellow pad with the red marker because it's that visual aspect of it. But you know, but you go, all right, so these are the houses, and you think yours is here? I don't see it, and it's that kind of showing, like, listen, this is the way it's going to work. It gets them to respect you and understand that you know, if you're not compromising on yourself at the listing presentation, they know that you're not going to compromise on the way that you're going to do their listing. So I think that's important.
Good stuff. I like it.
Cool.
We went well over an hour.
Any other
That's
questions?
great.
Yeah, we're a little over time, but if anybody's got anything else. Alright.
Well, our host has walked off.
Yeah,
But,
I know.
The moderator let us, do you wanna go close out the video?
Yeah, come
Yeah,
on,
he
close out
says
the
he
video.
wants to, okay.
Well, just join us next week, 4 o'clock. We're going to do scripted objection handlers. We're going to bring in some people from outside the market center to talk about it too, about their best scripts. We want people to email us or Facebook message us the objections that threw them off script, or the situations that threw them off script, and then try to deal with those. We're going to show some tactics and games that we've used in script practice groups and stuff, and really do some real diving into it. So we hope you guys will tune in for that next week too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amanda and Gianna, and David. You've shrunk. Anyway, I hope you guys got a lot out of that, and we'll catch you at the next live stream.
Were there people at the other office?
So we live streamed it on YouTube. Oh.
We're still live
Yeah, you
streaming
can
on
put it in
YouTube.
now.
Yeah.